The Print off the Cuff, presented by IIFL Wealth and Asset Management, corporate partner AU Small Finance Bank, in alliance with Indraprastha Polo Hospitals, airline partner SpiceJet.
This episode of Off the Cuff comes to you from a beautiful terrace in Bengaluru. Terrace of our mutual friend Vinita Bali's home, and my guest today, Malavika Sarukkai. Malvika, I am so honored and privileged to host you on Off the Cuff. And ideally, we would have preferred to have an audience and also feed them something and look after them. But we are just coming out of our rat holes after the pandemic. So at least the saving grace is we are not doing it over Zoom or something like that. We are talking physically. And Malvika, one reason you are here is that you have this show that you are taking, I think, all over the country now.
Hopefully, yeah. But firstly, wonderful to be here and on your show, Off the Cuff. One has heard so much about it. It's a delight.
Thank you, Malvika. Malvika, as you know, is among our foremost exponents of classical dance, particularly Bharatnatyam, but she's also experimenting a great deal. So, 50 years of dancing. Did you start dancing at 4 or 5? Or?
Well, I started early, and I started because my mother was so passionate about it. But could I have dreamt that I would have done and actually complete 50 years? I think no. And I don't think I ever thought about it. But now that it's happened and I've actually danced, it's a great feeling. It's also humbling, it's inspiring, it's many things. And I think dance is just a big vision.
So at which age did you do your Arangetram? That is the big thing with Bharatnatyam.
Arangetram, yeah, because it's the first time you get on stage.
And have an audience.
Yeah. Yes, and that, one is young. I was in my teens when I did it. So that was a great, as I said, opportunity, but something I didn't realize really what was happening at that point. I was too young for that to, really hit me. But after that, I think it's just been, dance has had a destiny. I can't explain it any other way because, you can't plan 50 years. There is no guarantee in the arts.
Right.
There's nothing because you might love to dance, you
have to be physically fit, you have to be mentally fit, and you have to keep on reinventing mentally. You have to be creative all the time.
And also, you might love to dance, but can you dance? Can one dance? Because I think dance is something which everybody wants to do. And you can't deny it, everybody likes to dance.
I think 90% of the country is doing this and they think this is dance.
Well, that's also dance, a different kind of dance. But the classical requires those years of, dedication, and it's like commitment. It's really a dance marathon.
And learning carries on. Even if you become a superstar of dance and a diva, learning carries on.
Learning carries on if you want it to carry on. I think that it's not that it happens all the time. I think the mind also has to be curious and, you must be excited. You must have utsaha. I keep saying, without utsaha being that excitement in whichever subject we're studying, without utsaha, we really don't want to push further. So I think dance being a learning is the kind, it really depends on the person.
Where does Malvika get her utsaha from?
Well,
her motivation, enthusiasm, these things are not always easy to translate and they lose something in translation, but utsaha.
Utsaha is just dance itself. It's just the act of dancing, the act of moving, the act of emotion. Because it's, it's like, I don't know if I can describe it like this. It's like say, forest. And first you're on the outskirts of the forest. And you look and you say, oh, beautiful trees. Now, shall I walk in? And as you go in, it's more and more enchanting. So it becomes a sanctuary. And then it's a calling. It's something which asks you to come inside. It invites you. But, this whole thing of going into the world of dance, of committing yourself or dedicating yourself requires like passion. And excitement in the movement itself. It can't be some excitement in an idea only. It has to be in the act of dancing.
Do you ever look your audiences in the eye to see how they are understanding it or following it or appreciating it or admiring it?
I don't think I have that absolutely one-on-one connection with the audience. But what I do know is when they feel it. Because I think that's this huge area of dance which we sometimes tend to ignore. That dance is really about getting people to empathize. So if the dance is, and dance again is at many levels, as everything else in life is about many layers or many levels. So at the deeper levels of dance, it's about communicating an emotion, of involving them in that emotion, getting them to empathize. And that's difficult. It's not easy. Dance as entertainment is easier because it's attractive and it's on the surface and it's just like, and the applause, everything that's easy. But getting an audience to empathize, to feel, is much more difficult. Which means, like, unless the artist really goes deep, one can't like invite that empathy. But when that does happen, it's magic. It's magic.
If you do something for 50 years, when do you get the feeling and how do you deal with the feeling, I've done this before, how many times will I do this? Or you invent new things all the time?
That's an interesting question because, when we say Taiyyari, right? We say for Taiyyari, for the arts of music, classical music, classical dance. So when we say, what do we mean by Taiyyari? Is Taiyyari just about saying I practice and therefore I'm ready like for a performance, I come on stage and I deliver whatever I've practiced? But when you look at Taiyyari, I don't think it's that really. I think Taiyyari is like, can I train this body as an instrument to live, feel, act, emote, live in the present? And that Taiyyari can never be stale if you're working on that kind of Taiyyari. So it doesn't matter 10, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, but you're working to fine-tune the body. When I say body, I mean the mind as well, as an instrument. So the deeper you go, the finer the melody, the finer the nuances. So that is the excitement. Because you say, oh, I've heard this tune, but guess what? I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that resonance. So what you're actually doing when you're doing Taiyyari, according to me, this is very personal experience, it is about fine-tuning the body and learning from it and discovering yourself, discovering potential, and discovering just how much further you can go.
And to that extent, it's different from, say, a famous singer, say Lata Mangeshkar, who goes on the stage, okay, please sing for us that song, right? Everybody knows the song. Or somebody doing one of these Bhangra pop type or item numbers, because everybody knows the steps, everybody knows the lines. Classical dancing is different from that.
I would say, it's a question of what we are searching for in the dance.
So if you're telling the same story,
yes.
most of Bharatnatyam is storytelling. If you're telling the same story on a stage in Bangalore and a stage in Mumbai or in Delhi, I don't know, Mumbai walas get very upset if I don't say Mumbai, but I say Bombay. I hope Bangalore walas don't get upset because old habits die hard. So Bengaluru. Will you do the same thing or will there always be variations?
Improvisation is part of classical dance. It's part. But improvisation doesn't happen because you think improvisation. You live improvisation. You can't think and say, oh, today I will do this, because then you've planned it. Improvisation is something which happens in the moment, but improvisation comes after mastery. So it's not up there floating on the surface to say, okay, now I'll take some improvisation. You have to go very deep, allow yourself to go very deep, and also get the technique. That when we say mastery in dance, we're talking of technique of everything that we do. So if you have that in your grasp, then there is freedom. But you have to work very hard to grasp it, to make it your own. There's a sense of ownership. So mastery, though we use the word of like improvisation, and it's hidden. It's a secret. So we have to go, it's like a treasure hunt. We have to go in search of it.
So you are not strategizing and planning, okay, today we'll improvise this. It happens while you're doing it.
It happens because you're living it. And I think that's another thing. Normally when they say with classical dance, they feel it's like whatever we're practiced, we're singing. I mean, we're dancing.
Performing.
Or a musician is performing. That's at one level. If you want to keep dance at that level, perfect.
By all means.
By all
yes.
means, why not? But that is not the only level. I'm saying we need to look at dance at the many
And if you
many levels.
keep it at one level, then it's difficult to sustain utsaha for 50 years.
I don't know. This is just a personal take on it. That what has kept me going is because it's a calling. So if I do something, I've come here, and then I look further and I say, "Oh my God, it's there. Let me go there." So there's something which I am invested in, which is a vision larger than myself. I think that's it. A vision which is much larger than me. And so there's so much, it's like looking at the sky. I mean, this is so much space. So why am I looking like this? Why can't I look like this? I think dance for me is that vision. So 50 years, I'm excited to do my new work, but will I do something else? The answer is yes. When? The answer is I don't know. But when the impulse is there and when there's something which excites me, I would do that. So dance is at many levels. And I think each one, each artist, absorbs it at their own level. And, but importantly, dance has to be lived. And I think it's not about the repetition. At a superficial level, it's repetition, but it's living the moment.
So I have a lot of questions from people who know more than me about these things. This is Revati Karan, my colleague, young colleague.
Okay.
Is it okay to experiment with classical dance form?
I think it's a question of what do we mean by experimentation? It's a big question. And I think to do any new work in classical dance is a huge responsibility. And it's also a burden at times because there is so much which has already happened. And there's so many artists who have come before us. So whatever we do, it's actually a very, we have to treat it with great caution when we start moving and pushing boundaries. I would say when we expand it and we want to move it and create more space is a great responsibility. And I think that happens. And, you can do that. You can handle it if you've really immersed. You need that roots of what you're doing, the philosophy of dance, to be really deep, because then you have stability. Yeah. So if you have really that vertical stability, then you can say, with this, I could try that, but it's with this. So it's about saying, how much have we given to dance in our training, in our thinking, in the philosophy of dance itself? And then we can move it. But it's a responsibility. It's not easy.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not something you just push around because it's classical. I mean, we're calling it classical. It has an alphabet. It has a movement vocabulary. So it has certain definitions, right?
It has a grammar.
It's a language. It's a grammar. It's a language. So when we're taking this language and saying, you know what, I would like to make a new word, you have to go with caution. You can't just make a word out of anywhere. It's whatever you have to. It's something where you analyze and have imagination and then create something out of it, because that's how you can expand vocabulary. But it is at least for me, it's always been with caution and with having a firm step in the classical, whatever alphabet I've learned. And then I'm able to push it, yeah.
So as we keep talking, I will also keep picking up some questions. So there is Ramkrishna Prayag from Jindal Steel and Power who's asking a simple question. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to make youngsters imbibe the dance art that you espouse at a time when the youth are distracted?
Well, that's a big question. It is a very big question because the world is distracted, people are distracted, adults are distracted, children are distracted. But I think in all this, one has to somehow get a few of them, because it's difficult to, this has to happen because you want to do it. It's not something which can be dictated, right? You can't dictate this. It has to be something that I feel that if somebody comes to a classical, a dance production, say, and they see it, and they're really moved by it, then it will touch them in some way to make them think a little differently about dance. But it requires, dance education in the syllabus, in colleges, in schools. I mean, a lot has to be done. And unless, I think this is a point I'd really like to make, is to say, unless we as a society value the arts, right? Nobody else is going to value it. Unless we say this is precious not as something which you bury and keep and forget about, but precious because it enriches your life, precious because it nourishes you as a human being. And if I say how? By learning how to feel. I seriously believe it's important.
And precious also because it gives you space for creativity and for change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not a scripture.
It isn't. It isn't at all. It actually gives you, it opens up the world. It actually talks about, when we talk of metaphors, it's about imagination. It's about saying plurality.
Right.
It's about saying there are many ways to an interpretation. The moment you even look at it, you say, oh my God, so my way is not the only way. There are other ways. So I think it teaches you to have a supple mind. I think the mind is then worked on and it's not so rigid.
And a supple body is taken for granted.
We hope so.
If you are
Yes.
training to be a dancer. So we never gave you a warning, nor did we give you any time for Taiyyari. But at some point, I might ask you to teach us a little bit of what you do with your eyes and your hands in your dance form. To
Okay.
that camera, not just now. You could meanwhile think what you will teach us.
Okay.
Double PhD in dance. Now, a question that I think I had also asked you over lunch.
Right.
This is from Uttam Tibrewal. The popularity of classical dance form seems to be fading. First of all, are young people coming to classical dance schools to learn? Or they are just going to learn salsa and whatever else, or Bollywood dancing, this or this, right?
Yeah. Many kinds.
Fixed steps, yes.
No, the answer to that is there is a huge interest for people to learn classical dance, because I find lots of dancers, even in their 30s, are already teaching others who are younger than them. There is, when everyone's learning dancing, you do it as part of it. And actually to learn dance, because it's about coordination, it's about expression, it's interesting. It gives you some high to learn dancing. But what you do with it, who are the ones who finally really start contributing to the world of performing arts, is a different category altogether. It's a different channel. But many younger people are learning dance, I think, all over the country. And Bharatanatyam, I think, is still the most popularly, learned style all over the country, or even in abroad. Bharatanatyam has somehow, I think, just captivated people.
Yeah. Different dance form, Kuchipudi, Odissi, Bharatnatyam. Can you do hybrid is a bad word. Can you shift the same story from one to the other?
No, I think different dance forms, would perhaps say do the same epic. They would all do it in different ways. They have their own interpretation. They have their own language of gesture. They would do all that. But, the thing of shall we say, putting dance styles closer together I think one has to ask the question, why are we doing it? And why don't we keep the distinction of different dance forms? Because each dance form has its own, its value. And it's aesthetics. It's the aesthetics of a dance form. And I think it's important to celebrate that dance form the way it is. But it's... so I would prefer, like, if dance forms retain their freshness and their individuality, because that is what gives them that distinction. That is what gives them that particular something special, which we look for. Odissi has a very different resonance to Bharatanatyam. And I'd like to sense it as a dancer, as an artist, as an audience. And I think it's important.
So in my multi-talented newsroom,
Yes.
we also have a Bharatnatyam dancer
Okay.
of stature.
Okay.
She's our editor for legal and judicial affairs,
Wow.
Bhadra Sinha. She also did it at Aragetram at a very young age. So she has some questions which are
Okay.
enormously more intelligent than mine. So that raises a sort of intellectual level of this conversation. So she says, as a dancer, you got trained in 2 classical forms, but your on-stage presentations transcended all boundaries and fixed lines taught in both. Because in both fixed lines are taught, so she says. You did it at a time when traditional presentation was in vogue. So she has questions following from it. Number 1, did you ever face any criticism from your contemporaries for being different?
Well, for me, I did 20 years of the traditional repertoire. 20 full years. And I trained with my gurus in Bombay and Madras, as it was then called. I did my traditional repertoire, which I loved. I performed, I traveled, I toured in India, I went abroad, everything. After that, I started looking at dance as a language. So when I look at dance as a language, then it's saying more to me. It's asking me to do more with it. Because it's not a style. I'm not going to confine it to A, B, C, D, E. I have opened it up and I'm saying I'm looking at it as a language. So after 20 years, for the next 30 years, I have done my own work. I've done my own choreography, my own concepts, and I've explored the language. It's just the excitement and again the utsaha to explore, to be adventurous and take risks. That is also part of working a language in a different way. When we are not sitting in the comfort zone of saying, what, I've done all this is just wonderful, I'll just remain here, because guess what? The audience loves what I do and I'm in this place. And they love it. So, but what I did was, they love it. But you know what? I see further. I see further in my dance. And that's when I started moving out of the regular repertoire. And I think I've been very fortunate because I've had people accept it as mainstream, because actually my work is deeply classical. It's hugely classical.
Absolutely.
It isn't, it can't be something else, because I'm working with a classical language. I'm working with that alphabet which we are calling classical. But I am just repositioning some words and I'm making some new words. And I'm using some very practiced words. So it's a question of how you redesign, how you refresh yourself, which is part of creativity, right? It's part of evolving a dance form. And it's part of ownership. It's part of taking responsibility, saying, you know what? And it's part of finding your voice, to say, you know what, this is my voice. I can't dance in somebody else's voice. That will be dishonest. So I'm saying I have to find my voice. I have to be authentic to the dance form.
So the 2 questions that follow from her question are connected.
Okay.
Is it okay to experiment with a classical dance form? And how being different helped you evolve as a dancer?
I think I did it not to be different. That was not the goal. What prompted me was, I think here I have to mention my mother, Saroja Kamakshi, because she was a person who was very spirited, very dedicated to classical dance, to what she believed was dance. And when I wanted to do some new work, she was a person who would say, go ahead, try it, take the risk, see what you find. If it doesn't work, it's okay. So, I think being a creative artist means risk taking. I don't know how many people want to take risks now. If they feel a format is working, then you keep working on the
Exactly.
same format.
The same formula, yes.
Yeah, same formula, because you feel, okay, that's what gives me,
Why fix what ain't broken?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would have given me the satisfaction of saying, have I explored, as an artist, have I explored this absolutely fascinating language of dance? And I think that's what I continue doing, explore. I want to be an explorer, and I want to be adventurous. And you know what? Taking risks is okay. That's life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, when we choose different vocations or whatever, we take risks. And I think we should be allowed to take a risk to say, what do we find?
I can tell you, my daring to talk dance with a double PhD in dance like you is also risk-taking, because I can be shown up to be a complete idiot.
No, I think we're just talking a lot about dance, I think.
So I have a question again from one of my colleagues, Rivti Karan. On 12th March, you presented your solo production, this one.
Yes.
Anubandh. So first she says, what does Anubandh mean?
Well, the what I've called it is connectedness.
Yeah.
And it's, I was working on this during the pandemic because, it just put me into a great shock, as it did everybody else. So there was this isolation and loneliness, trepidation, uncertainty, fractured world. I mean, one didn't know what was happening. And then I think after the initial shock, I went into the sanctuary of my dance. And when I went back there, it was, what do I really want to say? What do I feel the world needs? What do we need as people? Is really relationships. It's connectedness. Can I connect with the grass? Can I connect with the plants? Do I feel for it? Do I feel for the bird that flies in the sky? And I think the isolation only reinforced my thirst to say, you know what, this is not the way the human beings need to live. We really need to reach out. We need to bring down walls. We need to trust. We have to, because the even wearing a mask, for example, when somebody comes in, you're saying, I don't know if I should go so close. I mean, there's already there's a distrust,
Right.
which we didn't have before, but we have. We have. It's happening in the environment around us. So when I looked at all that, I felt that's why I've called it Anubandh Connectedness, because I said this production is about our lives. It's about people. It's about the world. It's about the sun and the moon. It's about the Pancha Mahabhutas, as we call it, the great elements, these elements which affect all of us, whether it's earth or water or fire or wind and space. I mean, these elements, as they're honored in India, affect our lives. And so this Anubandh actually became a very, as I said, it became a personal interpretation of our lives. And what I found very rewarding after performing it in Bombay, or Mumbai as we need to call it, was that people said, you know what, it's my story. What you danced is my story, is my life. And I said, wow. I said, that is the connection. It's something, and I wanted to do something which was reaching out, because what we see in the world today is fractured, it's alarming, it's terrifying, and Anubandh is a call of hope, of the transformative power of hope. And we need hope, because there are a lot of good people out there. The world has a lot of good people too. So it's a call for hope. and it's, as I said, it's about inclusivity. It's about inclusivity.
How useful and how productive do you find using classical art for social messaging?
Considering that it's a stylized language, I would like to call it a stylized language, right? So it has a certain, what shall I say, a certain, not format, but a certain way of things being depicted. It's not in the newspaper. It's not the lokadharma, as they call it, just the worldly. It's about stylization. So I would say social message, if you say how, taking something but distilling it through the language of dance and then working through metaphor and simile, because that's how stylization works. It's not the actual A to A. It is making a leap from A to M.
So what is the social message that you feel most passionate about?
Right now, through Anubandh, what I've tried to work with is to say we need to bring down the walls.
And increase trust.
And trust. We need friendship. We need to, because when we are in grief, there is despair, there is loneliness, and we are encased, we are removed. It is about bringing down the walls. I think that is what Anubandh is about. Bringing down walls and then saying, do you trust me? Like, trust me. It's okay. We might not, readily jump into it, but can we learn to trust? And can we see ourselves as humanity?
Right.
That's what I think Anubandh is about. Can we see ourselves, this world, as humanity? And I think that's, again, what this pandemic did. It just knocked out the boundaries. I mean, grief in India, grief in Israel, grief in USA, in Japan, it was grief.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
It started with Italy, went to Spain, and then was everywhere.
Everywhere. And at the same time. So it's also, you realize we are humanity. And we need to rekindle that, because it's easier to feel isolated than to feel friendship.
In Bharatnatyam, in the dance form, does the question of gender ever come in? Is it too male-centric? Can it be more female-centric?
No, actually,
does it need balance?
No, actually, it's been very female-centric, because the women have been the performers. The hereditary performers were women.
Right.
So it was a very women-centric performing art. And it continued as a women-centric. As a matter of fact, now we have many more male dancers who have taken it up, and why not? I mean, it doesn't belong to one group, and it doesn't, we can't disallow another group of people.
I think the question, maybe I have to word it better.
Sure.
So what is it that the dance is showing devotion for? Isn't it more for the male form, the divine form that's male?
That there are divinity, if you say divinity, in the larger sense, is like neutral. Like you say Brahman is neutral. It's just great divinity. Then when we say Purusha Prakriti, obviously we have the male and the female. We have two parts to that.
It's Brahman people, not Brahman. It's Brahman, not as in the caste.
Yeah,
Brahman,
not at all in the caste.
Yeah.
Brahman,
Yes.
as in that absolute, in that sense of that vastness, which has no gender at all. But then we have male and female principles, But it's like saying both coexist. I think we have to learn to say things coexist. It's easier to sort of, slice it and say this and that. No. For example, in movement, we say sthiti, gati. Sthiti being stillness, gati being movement. Now, does both need each other? When you have stillness and you have movement, it completes it. But our minds have to allow coexistence. And I think it's been too binary. And we're going towards a more binary sort of, everything being fragmented. and somehow seen in isolation. But actually, I think what we need to do is, can we see it in coexistence? When we say good and bad, is it what? It's coexistence. If we say Asura and we say Devas, coexistence. Are they out there? Are the demons out there somewhere else, like they don't belong to me? No.
They are all here.
They're part of us. Coexistence. And I think we need to accept it. And then I think we'll be much more tolerant people.
Right. So before I let you go,
Yes.
As I warned you, I gave you 10-minute warning. So teach us a little bit of Bharatnatyam teacher.
Oh, okay. Now I'll have to see what to do. Okay. Very simply, since we're sitting on chairs.
Right.
Because I'd much rather get up and dance and move and do a lot of things. But for example, when I say dance has to live, okay, that is whatever, it's not enough to just put it out as a practiced movement. For example, we have this gesture, and if I did this gesture, it's very rare. It shows this is a flower. It's a blossoming flower, right? I mean, when we look at it, it's a blossoming flower.
Right.
So if I just practice it and say, as long as I'm doing this, the flower is blossoming, the answer is no.
No.
No. So what do I have to do to make it blossom every time? What do I have to do as an artist to actually make it come to life? Then we get into the world of energy, which is the inner reserve, right, inside the artist, to say, can I bring it to life? Can I actually see it come to life? Can I feel it? Can I touch it? Can I touch its softness? Can I feel its fragrance? So it's not enough to do, means nothing. But if I put myself into it fully, if I'm picking up something, for example, if I do this and I say, then it is breath, it is energy, it is emotion, it is this gesture. It's like, how is this? If it's something which is soft, then the way I pick it up would be this. So there is a gentleness, there is a sense of touch, there's a tactile of saying, how can I do it? It's not enough to say, then what am I picking up? Stones? What is it? If it's a flower, it's a creeper, it's this wire. For example, if I pick up this wire, it everything requires an invested moment. So when we say this is energy, but it's also expression, it's also, I have to take this off, I can't do it with my glasses, to say, I feel this flower in me. I feel myself awakening. So it's not enough, we can't flatten it. It has to be lived and nourished and energized. And we say, putting prana, like breath.
Breath, yes.
Breath. So it's like each time I do it, it's prana. It's how can I pour it into that? So then this is the breath it's the whole body, the torso is working. Actually, it's the whole being which has to live. It's not enough for us to be just with gestures, because then it becomes like dumb charades, which means nothing. So dance is like, can you imagine that every movement has to have that unique quality to it? Every movement. For example, if I do tree, right? I could do tree and say this is tree, because this is tree. Once I do this hasta and I do it, people who can read the dance, the question is, are you going to read it or feel it? Huge difference. So if I'm reading dance, I can say, if I do this, this is tree. But if I really want to do tree, I would. And then I'm saying, how does this tree feel? What is the strength of the tree? So the movement itself has the strength, has the reach, has the spread. So then if I do this and look up this much, then I can see foliage. I can see the huge tree. I can see a strong trunk. But that is because I am energizing this hand. I'm invested in it. I'm engaged with it, and I feel it. I feel every moment, and that is what is so tough. So there is an emotional stamina which is like a reservoir. We have to constantly help it, because if that reservoir inside is dried up, we're finished. Because then whatever I do is going to be very flat. So it's like living a life where you say, can I fill this reservoir? What do I fill it with? How do I fill it? How do I continue to be inspired? So dance is like, in every movement requires that attention, requires that nuance, requires that gamaka, as we'd say. Like in music, we say gamakas, those little nuances. That is it. So it's a very evolved language of movement. We can call it what we want, but it is a movement language which is physical, emotional, and spiritual. So that's what we're doing all together.
That's a wonderful note to conclude this on. I can learn, but I don't think I can perform.
Not everyone performs.
Not everybody.
I think you can be a rasika.
Right.
You can come to the audience and be people, because we need people who also, who also can appreciate.
Connoisseurs.
Yeah, connoisseurs at a certain level, but at least appreciating classical dance, And the only way to make that happen is to dance fully. That's what I've said. I can't dance like 80%. If I dance, I'm dancing like 150%, because I say, you know what, I want to live the moment. I want to live the bliss.
Keep dancing. 50 is just the beginning.
That I'm not sure.
And maybe we have many more landmarks, Malvika. And I'm
you.
so grateful to you for finding this time and for being so patient with me.
Thank you. Enjoyed it, and thank you both. Thank you.
The Print Off the Cuff, presented by IIFL Wealth and Asset Management, corporate partner AU Small Finance Bank, in alliance with Indraprastha Polo Hospitals, airline partner SpiceJet.